Sahano Saviya Tejasvita Shavai Om Shanti. Sir, பேசுறது கரெக்டா கேக்குறதா? Is it okay? Are you able to hear rightly, clearly?
Yes, కొంచెం echo వద్దు sir, కొంచెం echo.
There's an echo.
Echo, no? Okay.
Yes.
There's an echo. So we have to reduce it a little bit. Echo? Has
Still,
been speaking, still there, no?
Yes, little bit.
Little bit.
But better than before.
Much better than before. Innu konjam koringo. Yeah. Is it okay now, Prasad?
Little more, little down sir. இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் more.
இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் குறைக்கணும். The echo is still there, you are saying.
Milder இருக்கு sir.
Okay. Reduce it. Yeah. Now?
Yes sir.
Okay now?
Yes.
Is it okay better now?
Better
Yes.
sir. But break ஆயிட்டு இருக்கு நடுவுல கொஞ்சம்.
Okay. That will break. Now we are in Ganesh's house, no?
Okay.
Yeah, since we are in his house, it will break only. Yeah. Good. Before we move into the text, we have a question. We'll take that question up and then we'll move on to the text. The question is from this book Vedanta Treatise, chapter 3, Life Its Course. Under the topic, the individual mechanism, where he talks about the 3 transactions of life. In that, just before the poem Mountain and the Squirrel, 3 paragraphs before that, there is a statement. Your present nature is best suited for your development. The statement says your present nature is best suited for your development. And the question is, explain this. And this question is from our youngest student. This question is asked by the youngest student of our class. 90-year-old lady. Now the answer. The present is best suited for evolution. Whatever our present is, that present is best suited for our evolution. What does that present means? The present is the situation that we have gotten into, and this is what I should be going through now. That is the present. And that is the right thing, and that is the best thing that can happen for evolution. So, your present nature is best suited for your development. People always believe that if there is a better environment, if there is a better place, growth will be accelerated. If I am in a better environment, if I am in a better place, right from the physical environment to the people they are with, even to their own physical body, they believe that if it was better, growth will be faster and better. For which he says, your present nature is best suited for your development. So to remove the misunderstanding that there is no conducive environment as such. There is no conducive environment as such that is better environment, not conducive, better environment than what you are presently. But my present is full of, but there is nothing that I can see good in my present. How can that present be best suited for our growth? Because I am not able to see anything good at all in my present. Since I am not able to see anything good at all, how can I say that is best suited? You got to make use of your faculties, whatever your capacities are, whatever your strengths are. It is the nature plan is such that you will always be given something which you can handle only. You will never be given that which you cannot handle. If something that you cannot handle comes to you, you will collapse immediately. You won't be even sitting here. So any good situation or bad situation that comes is because of you can that situation is the right thing to happen now for you to make use of your faculties. If you can't make use of your faculties now in the current situation, you can never make use of it anywhere. Therefore, your present nature, your present setup is best suited for your development. That is from one angle. From another angle, your present nature is the reality. Whatever your present nature in terms of the combination of the gunas or it can be in the combination of anything, this is the reality. You can always grow working through the reality only. You can never grow thinking in terms of an ideal environment for growth. Growth happens in reality. Growth doesn't happen in an ideal environment. For what the mind calls as ideal environment is nothing but in the present state effort நிறைய போட வேண்டியிருக்குது. In an ideal environment, I need not do so much of effort. So the mind always says, in an ideal environment, the effort that is required will be less. In the present environment, the effort that I have to do is more. He comes and says, it is not like that. For the effort that you have to do is always the effort that you have to do is always the same. It doesn't differ. The effort part doesn't differ. But the mind believes that something is better than the present. We have given this example any number of times. No? You go to the restaurant and order food. Somebody will order the same food in the next table, and the food on the next table will look, the food on the next table looks appealing than your food. Both the sambar idli is from the same rotten kitchen only. No difference at all. It's not that for you it came from a different kitchen, for that person it came from a different kitchen. Both came from the same kitchen only, but still the mind sees something better. It means it is not focusing on the present. Therefore, he says, the way to grow is to make best use of your present nature. Unless you exhaust this, you can never move on to the next. So nature's blessing is such that it comes and gives you something so that you can exhaust and move on to the move on to the next. That exhausting portion, the mind feels as very troublesome. If there is an easy way out, it will be better. No, without or better way in the, there is an easy way out, it is better. That's where it compares and says, if I had gotten this when I was a teenager, if I had gotten this when I was in womb itself, you can go on saying it. But nevertheless, the truth is what? Your present nature, you are supposed to, whatever needs for your growth, the divine law is, it keeps coming. Whatever is required for your growth keeps coming. All that you got to do is what? All that you got to do for your growth is make sure that the present is properly utilized. When the present is properly utilized, then you are naturally qualifying to go to the next level. If the present is not properly utilized, you can never grow to the next level. Why? Because you have to finish this. You can go to the next. So what is nature's plan? That's what he says. Your present nature is best suited for your development. Realize that, make good use of your faculties to discover the peace and happiness within you. So make use of your present nature instead of complaining about it. So what he is saying is, instead of complaining about it, instead of worrying about it, make use of your present nature. The very fact that we are saying we have to grow means we accept that there are deficiencies now. The deficiencies with which I want to outgrow is not environmental deficiency. The deficiency that I want to outgrow is internal. Since I am always looking to overcome my internal deficiency, your present nature is best suited, because to overcome that deficiency, your present nature will help you to put that current effort, which the mind finds it very difficult to accept. It will always say, correct, sir, but still better and a better environment, a better place, a better family, a better embodiment, anything. But the law of growth says your present nature is best suited for your development. You cannot find anything better than that now. Why? Because of the divine law. It comes to you only what you can handle. Even when it comes to you, it comes with a support to help you to handle that. That's the divine plan. The divine plan is such that even when difficult thing comes, it's not only the difficult thing alone that is coming. Along with the difficulty, there is a source to bail you out, isn't it? There is a help that is coming. No sorrow comes without help, but then we don't see it, we don't acknowledge it, we don't receive it. That is our problem. But the reality of life is such that a sorrow comes, a difficulty comes, along with that sorrow, along with the difficulty comes a support to manage that. If that supporting factor isn't there, then the statement is wrong. Supposing the supporting factor doesn't come at all, then you can't say your present nature is best suited for your development, because you'll be drowned in that. When you are drowning in that, how can you say that is best suited for your development? No. It's not only the trouble. Along with the trouble comes the support. Along with the trouble comes support, and you always get support at your level as to what is needed. That support always comes. The mind's inability to accept this becomes the problem. It is not the situation or the lack of help. Two things. It is not the situation or lack of help the problem. It is the mind's inability to accept. Why the mind finds it difficult to accept? Because the source that is coming to help you always says a path to get out of it. And the mind will not like that. There is a path, there is a sorrow, and then there is a source to come and help you out. And when that source comes and helps you out and says this is the path, invariably we ignore that. Why do we ignore that? Because it is not something that is very appealing, pleasant. Why it is not appealing, pleasant? Because that person says, the situation says, that person will say, use me as an inspiration and put your effort and grow. The mind says, effort lam poda solladu. So the mind's argument is, don't ask for effort and all. Do something else. In that way, everybody feels their present is the most unconducive for their growth. So from this angle, most of the people believe their present situation is most unconducive for their growth. Vedanta comes and says in this paragraph, he is saying your present nature is best suited for your development. But sir, if I have a unhealthy body, that is best suited now. But unhealthy, not supporting environment around, that is best for you now. Why? In the deepest core we understand. You get what you deserve. But the divine law is such that you not only get what you deserve, if there is pain in it, support to get you out of it also comes. That's the divine law. The support comes. Mind doesn't receive that support. Recognizing that support is bhakti yoga. Recognizing the support is bhakti yoga, willing to make the effort to get out of it is karma yoga. So recognizing there is the divine support always comes with the problem, isn't it? From some unexpected quarters it comes, no? You won't even know that help will come, but it comes. Therefore, all that you got to do is what? Make the best use of your present. That's all you got to do. So the question that Vatsalama asked is, explain this statement. Your present nature is best suited for your growth. Her present nature is best suited for her growth. That's what she's asking. Realize that, make good use of your faculties to discover the peace and happiness within you. Mind always believe in something better external, because it doesn't have a conviction in the effort that is going to help you to transcend. It always believes a better place will be a conducive environment where effort can be minimal, less. Effort kami aayitna, it is that much, because conducive environment means easy effort, no? Isn't it? AC போடணும், லைட் வைக்கணும், சேர் போடணும், கார்பெட் போடணும். Make everything so conducive so that you can listen better. As we are doing all this, we understand what this has got nothing to do with learning, absorbing. Even though we make an effort to do all this, we understand this has got nothing to do with that. Why do we then do it? That is compassion. That is affection. That is compassion. Not as a substitute for effort. When you try to make things conducive for your child, you creating a conducive environment for your child to study is not a substitute for the effort. You don't see it as a substitute, or you don't see it as an aid to support. You say you still do it because that is you still do it. Why? That's your affection. That's your love. You do it because of that. As you are doing it, you also understand what? At the end of the day, learning happens only through the child's effort, not because of the best school, the best table, the best teacher, everything the best, but the child is not doing the effort. What difference does it make? Nothing helps, isn't it? Therefore, environment conducive is what I should be grateful to, but not as a substitute to effort. So in that sense, your present nature is best suited for your development. This is answering the question. Now we will come back to our chapter that we are studying. Chapter 20, the Supreme Reality. The idea of Trinity. What is this idea of Trinity talking about? The idea of Trinity is talking about how the message that they are conveying is subtle, and what are all the ways they are making to convey this message. What is the message? The theme is Brahman. How to communicate Brahman? As they keep saying, it cannot be communicated, it cannot be communicated. Their compassion makes them to do something to communicate. That which can't be communicated, and they keep communicating, no? So there is an effort that is made to explain the subtle theme. If it can't be communicated, logically what should one do? இதெல்லாம் சொல்லி கொடுக்க முடியாத சமாச்சாரம்னு சொல்லிட்டோம்னா what should they do? Just stay quiet. அவ்வளவுதான், வாய் மூடி நிற்க வேண்டியதான், isn't it? Just stay quiet. Why create such a vast body of literature? Why create such a vast thing? And why live life in such a way that life of self-sacrifice to inspire the other? It means in and through all this, Brahman cannot be communicated directly, but something in you can be touched. Something in you can be touched, and when that point is touched, you are inspired, you are motivated. So various methodologies they adopt to touch that. How to do that? One idea that they found out is the idea of one of the ideas is the idea of Trinity. And what is this Trinity talking about? From the philosophical level, the Akshara, the Akshara, the Uttama Purusha. That is the idea of Trinity from the philosophical level. The Akshara, the Akshara, and the Uttama Purusha. In the 8th chapter we saw last week, no? Other than this unmanifest is another unmanifest. That is the idea of Trinity. From another angle, plurality to duality to non-dual. Again 3. From plurality to duality to non-dual. Plurality means 3. Plurality means you see 3 things you see. You see yourself and you see the world around. Distinct and different from these two is God. That is called plurality. From plurality, you evolve to dual. Duality is the world dissolves and you see only God. So from plurality, you evolve to duality. You see only God. But then you are the subject seeing something as God the object. Then comes the highest, the non-dual. The non-dual means God alone is. God alone is. The idea of Trinity takes you to that. That is why we'll be discussing the 3 schools of thought. We'll be discussing the 3 schools of thought from this angle. The first angle is Kshara, Akshara, Uttama Purusha. The second angle is the 3 schools of thought. Technically, it is called Dvaita, Visishta Advaita, and Advaita. Dvaita, if you translate it in English, you have to translate it as dual. Visishta Advaita, you have to translate it as special non-dual. Advaita is non-dual. Visishta means special. Special non-dual and non-dual. Three acharyas are the ones who individually. It's not that these schools of thought was founded by these 3 acharyas. These 3 levels existed from the beginning. These 3 levels existed, and Vedas addresses all the 3 levels. If the person is at the dualistic level, that person is addressed. If the person has come to the Visishta Advaita level, that person is also addressed. And then the ultimate idea is to come to the non-dual. And decades of study has to be spent on the distinction between the qualified non-dualism and non-dualism. That distinction itself is very, very difficult. And we are not going to go into the technicalities of it so much. We will try to do it in a very, very, we will touch base generally we will talk about these 2. But still in the idea of Trinity, you need to know these 3. These 3 schools are not conflicting with one another. These 3 schools are steps towards perfection. Again, I repeat. These three schools are not in conflict with one another. For any knowledge and understanding about God cannot be conflicting. How can it conflict? How can you talk about God and still have a conflicting theory? It is not possible. You cannot talk about God and have a fight. No. Sir, God goes on a fight and fight is happening only because of God. No, isn't it? Three schools of thought do not conflict with each other. The three schools of thought is a one steps into the other. One steps into the other. So when you look at it from the higher angle, theoretically the lower the earlier step may appear to be lower. It is like from 12th standard and the 8th standard will look. From 12th standard, 8th standard will look lower only. But you cannot say 8th standard is lower. Why? Because without that, you could have never come to the 12th. Therefore, the original Vedic plan was all these three are used as steps. Invariably, what happens? One or two great masters will come in some tradition, and that personality is so overpowering that the steps will be forgotten and that personality will become important. Always it happens. And somebody will come and set it right. Somebody will get attracted to one personality, and then somebody else will come and set it right. And whoever sets it right, that generation will get attracted to that personality, and then somebody will come and set it right. Yeah. எம்ஜிஆர்லேருந்து ரஜினிகாந்த் வருவார், ரஜினிகாந்த்லேருந்து விஜய் வருவார், விஜய்லேருந்து இப்போ யாரும் இருக்கிறாங்களோ தெரியல, பிரபாகரும் வந்திருக்கணும், பிரபாகரும் வந்துருக்கணும், இங்கே ஃப்ரண்ட்ல உட்காந்துருக்கிறாரு. யூ ட்ரைட் நோ, அதான் சொல்கிறேன், யூ ட்ரைட் நோ, ஃபோட்டோஷூட்லாம் ஹிட் இட். It keeps changing. It keeps changing. So but the idea doesn't change. What is the idea? It's the mental maturity. The idea of Trinity talks about the mental maturity of how you can relate with God. In Vedanta, maturity is defined by your understanding of God. Better your understanding of God, more matured you will be. Poor understanding of God, poor will be your maturity. And you always find most of the beings are poor in understanding. So what they do, instead of talking about these three schools of thought and all, we have to start from something lower than that also. But in this chapter, we are assuming that Maya ella mudistom. We have transcended. We have understood what is Maya and all that. Therefore, the assumption is we are qualified to discuss what are these three schools of thought. We assume and then we discuss. This is the theme of this idea of Trinity. First one is Kshara, Kshara and Uttama Purusha. The perishable, the imperishable, beyond perishable and imperishable. All that we know of, including the knower, perishes. all that we know of, including the knower, perishes. If everything is perishable, perishable means that which is bound by time. Perishable means that which is bound by time, that which is bound by the limitation. Perishable means limitation. It is bound by that. If all are perishable, and if perishable is the reality, from where does the human being get an idea of permanency? On observation, it can be a mere pratyaksha pramanam. The pratyaksha pramanam says all are perishable. You infer. Anumana Upamana also teaches you that all are perishable. And we do not have anything other than this. We have only two, actually speaking, we have only two methods. One is the pratyaksha, another is anumana. Pratyaksha means seeing, anumana is you infer. In fact, these are the two, fundamentally speaking, these are the two. Anumana, the third one comes as an aid to inference also. So for all practical purposes, it is only the two. And who do we call a person as intellectual? Intellectual means one who can infer rightly. Who's an intellectual? He has when we say this person is intellectual, his intellect is developed. He has a sharp intellect. What do we mean by all that? This person knows how to infer rightly. So it is about inference. Pratyaksha Pramanam also says everything is perishable. Inference reinforces that. Sometimes inference will say Pratyaksha is wrong. You infer and you understand what you see is wrong. Sometimes you infer and you'll understand what you heard is wrong. But here, Pratyaksha Pramanam teaches everything is impermanent. Inference also supports it. It means we cannot have any knowledge of anything called permanent. It means we will not be even able to conceive of something called permanent. Vedanta starts from this point they start. Actually, this is the starting point of Vedanta. From where are we getting this notion? From where are we getting this idea of reality, permanency? For it should not come, no? This is a challenge. In fact, so much of preparatory studies, so much of preparatory textbooks are all taught for a person to understand this. Once you understand this point, then the next becomes easy. So, first thing is what? From where does the human being get the notion of permanency, reality? Second, from another angle. Pratyaksha Pramanam says you are not free. Inference also says you are not free. Correct? Pratyaksha Pramanam says you are not free. You are bound by, you are bound. Inference also says you are not free, isn't it? They always say freedom comes with reasonable restrictions, isn't it? Freedom is not free. Freedom comes with reasonable restrictions. Fight what is that reasonable restriction? So, first thing is impermanency. Second thing is bondage. Pratyaksha Pramanam says bondage is the reality. Inference also says bondage is the reality. From where does this man get the idea of freedom then? For he cannot know anything beyond what the instruments can teach him. Are you able to follow? A human being can never know beyond the instruments. And the instruments is senses for pratyaksha, intellect for inference. Pratyaksha for data, senses for data, and intellect for inference. Both of these proves some fact of life. What is it? Temporary bondage. And yet, right from the newborn, the thirst for freedom is there. If bondage is the reality, from where will you get even the vague idea of what freedom is? It means at the core, there is something. At the core, there is something different from all that you can see and infer. What is that? Akshara. What is that? The name given to that is Akshara. Very big logical development of thought, even to come to Akshara. We have heard Shara, Akshara, 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 Uttama Purusha a million times. We don't even know the background and we don't even understand the depth of the development of this thought process. Like when we say tamas means indolence, tamas means this. So we restrict our understanding of tamas is restricted to that only, isn't it? What is said for definition, what is said as the trigger for thinking is taken as absolute. Correct. What is given as trigger for thinking is taken as absolute. So what is that trigger for thinking here in this context? Kshara. From Kshara, you move on to Akshara. And when they said Akshara, person says, yes, now I understand. Now I understand something. Akshara. The moment you say, I understand, the job of the knowledge is to come and say, you don't understand. For at any point of time, you can never say, I understood. For those who have understood will not say, I understood. Those who have understood will say, you can only become that. For understanding implies duality again. There is an understander, and that I don't know whether there's a word called understander in English. Yeah, we will create a new word today. Yeah. There is one understander, and that understander is understanding something. And anything the understander understands becomes wrong only. Why? Because it is done through the instruments. Again, those instruments are limited by nature. Therefore, the very Akshara itself is extraordinary. The very definition of Akshara itself is extraordinary. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita he says, this Akshara is also known as Kutastha, he says. This Akshara is also known as Kutastha. Kutastha means the base that supports. Kutastha is the goldsmith. Kutastha means what do you call that goldsmith stone, where he hits and makes all kinds of ornaments. That is Kutastha. Anvil. Correct. Anvil. Correct. Kutastha means and. Correct. Kutastha is and. Yes. Yes. It is that base on which all shapes and sizes come, but that doesn't go through any change. That remains the same, Kutastha. And this Akshara is Kutastha. And then he goes on to say, it's not even Kutastha, it is not even Akshara, Uttama Purushas Anyaha. Other than this is the Uttama Purusha. Uttama Purusha means the supreme. Supreme. What is that Uttama Purusha? The unknowable. The unknowable. Whenever we say unknowable, it is implied. It's half sentence. When we say it is unknowable, it is only half the sentence. How will you complete the sentence? Unknowable by instruments. That you have to supply all the time. Unknowable by instruments. It is unknowable by instruments. Even relatively, we see this. Subtler theme cannot be communicated using a grosser instrument, even relatively also. So you continue the same thing in the absolute sense. Even relatively, how does it work? You have to talk about an emotion. You have to communicate emotion. Forget about talking about it. You have to communicate emotion. How can you communicate an emotion? Very difficult. Or through whatever means you communicate your emotion, you always understand what? In whatever way you communicate your emotion, you will understand deep inside you is what? It's not communicated at all. It is not at all communicated. Isn't it? Even relatively, even a ordinary can't say ordinary emotion. In this context, we have to say that, yeah, even an emotion like love, how difficult it is to convey, or in whatever methods you convey, it creates more confusions than actually communicating what love is. Gift கொடுத்தாதான் love பண்ணா, it becomes a problem, isn't it? Only if you give a gift, it can be called as love. Why it is difficult? Because you can give a gift without loving also. You may not give a gift and still love. It means how complicated it is as an ordinary thing. Much deeper than that is a thought, an idea. A person comes up with an idea. How difficult it is for that person to communicate this idea will actually work. Okay, he comes up with he gets an idea. He has to present that idea to the group of, who are they? Somebody comes up with an idea, they go and present that idea, no, to the group of people to get funding. How difficult it is for this person to communicate that idea. Or the only way that you can communicate that idea is by talking about the benefit that person will get. Are you able to follow? You have an idea, you have to communicate that idea. How can you communicate that idea? The only way you can communicate is by explaining. இதனால உங்களுக்கு என்ன benefit? Unless you can communicate the benefit, idea itself doesn't get understood. More complicated. It means even in the relative level we see it is so difficult to communicate subtler and subtler things. The subtlest, which is beyond the instruments, how to communicate. The idea of Trinity is based on that. The idea of Trinity is to explain how that which cannot be communicated can be communicated. They are not saying we are communicating it. They are only saying it is difficult. Through the instruments, it is impossible. Through the instruments, it is impossible. Forget it. You can never get it through the instruments. Then through what you can get? Then through what you can get, that is where knowledge as an independent authority comes in. This is the only authority, and this is the only way you can get it. Why? Because we have already eliminated pratyaksha and anumanam. Once you have already eliminated pratyaksha and anumanam, you don't go back to that to prove it. That's why in Vedanta, in nowadays they do all this, no? Stick some, or what do you do that? They stick, no? When you go for ECG, they stick something, no? Stick like that all over the body of a person and read the mind. Wow, he's a holy person. Because, and everybody claps also. Vedanta says, all are fools to do that. The person going and sitting there is also a person who's going and sitting there is also the fool. One who's reading that is also a fool. Why? Because we have already eliminated what? We have already eliminated this. Since we have already eliminated this, we cannot go back to it and prove it through that. Very difficult. Very challenging is to break that. Very challenging is to break it, because again and again we'll fall for that only. The machine which scientists kandupidichitaanga. What difference does it make? Because that instrument have no access. That instrument that have no access to it. The idea of Trinity comes through this understanding, that understand the limitation of the instrument and how this instrument cannot access that. How instrument cannot access that. That is why in Vedanta, in Vedas, Vedanta, we say all that we use to represent the divine is symbolic. It is symbolic only, not to be taken literally. If you take it literally and ask questions, it looks very silly. We look at the sun and we say sun god. We also know there is nobody there driving the chariot. We also know that, but it is symbolic of something. It symbolizes. If you take it real, then what happens? Why do you take it as real? Why anybody takes those things as real? Because they are still under the influence of looking for an instrumental proof. They want a proof through instrumental proof. They are still looking for proof through instruments. That's why they still try with all these things. In Vedanta, lot of effort is done to explain what. Don't try any of these through the instruments. Let go of the instruments. Why let go of that instrument is because what you are seeking cannot be gotten from that. Why? For the instruments will keep telling you again and again two things. What the instruments will tell you? Instrument will say it is temporary. Instrument will say you are bound. Instrument can never tell you you are free. Instrument can never tell you you are, it is real. Instrument can never tell you that. Why? Because both don't exist. As far as the instrument is concerned, both don't exist. What? Freedom also doesn't exist. Reality also doesn't exist from the standpoint of the instruments. Why? Because instruments will say, honestly, instrument will say what? It is, instrument will say, all that you are seeing is temporary. And what these people talking about, freedom, moksha and all, doesn't exist because you are in bondage. When the goal is something beyond the instruments, when the goal is something which is beyond the instruments, what do we do in Vedanta? We understand the limitations of the instruments and we also say this will not help us to get there. Follow? That எப்படி communicate பண்றது? Idea of Trinity. How to communicate that? The idea of Trinity takes us from the Kshara to Akshara, and even that Akshara has a glimpse of some inspiration, motivation. To offset that also, Uttama Purusha comes in. Uttama Purushas Anyaha. That is one way of doing it. In the development of intellect, logically speaking, age of scientific inquiry should be on top, no? But then age of contemplation will be on top, not the age of scientific inquiry. Scientific inquiry is inferior to contemplation, full stop. How much ever we read that, we still go back thinking that is superior. Even though we know very clearly that it is lower. If scientific inquiry is highest, now what we should have been, the 4 stages of development of intellect, what should have come first or topmost? Scientific inquiry. But why scientific inquiry also cannot reveal the truth? Because by nature, they can reveal only that which is, by nature, they can reveal only that which is limited. And limited means 2 things. What? It will cause bondage and temporary. Freedom from death. What is the freedom that? Freedom from? What is the freedom? Freedom from death. For we are not able to accept mortality. We are a mortal. We are not able to accept that. So when we say freedom, freedom from what? We think freedom from all this. No. Vedanta says it's not freedom from all this. It is at the deepest core you want freedom from death. It's not that you are afraid of dying, not in that sense. It is also true that people are afraid of dying. That's also that's an independent subject we are not discussing now. We are saying what is it that we are actually looking at? When we say freedom from what? Is the deepest core. Freedom from death. Freedom from death means freedom from mortality. Right from a Rakshasa, Asura, everybody seeks immortality. Even a Rakshasa seeks immortality only, no? Correct? That's how many times we have seen this. All Puranic stories will start with Rakshasa doing tapas. Rishis don't do tapas at all there. Rakshasa will do tapas. And Brahma will come. Pleased by the tapas, Brahma will come. He says, I am pleased by your tapas. What do you want? Rakshasa will ask for immortality. I should not die. Brahma says, anything else you ask. Why? Because I'm waiting in the queue, he says. You go first, I am going to come second. Only difference is time difference now. Only the time difference matters. But otherwise, you die, I cannot give you Amrtatvam, I cannot give you. Amrtatvam, I cannot give you. Then ask for something else. And they will ask. Whatever you ask, you cannot escape. You cannot escape death, isn't it? Hiranyakashipu said, I should not be killed inside, I should not be killed outside. I should not be killed in the morning, I should not be killed day or night. No weapons. Sandhya time, what would you call that as? It's neither day nor night. If man and animal combines together and comes, what will happen? You cannot do anything, no. Weapons. Nail cannot be called as nails are not considered as weapons. And he used nails too. It means what? Right from the Rakshasa to the Asura, to the Rishis, to the Maharshis, to the greatest person, all beings are trying for one thing. What? Immortality. And there is only one way to that immortality. Tyage naike amrtatva manushu. Vedas, Kaivalya Upanishad. Na karmanana prajayadanena tyage naike amrtatva manushu. The only way you can get to that immortality is by tyaga. What do you let go of? Instruments you let go of. You let go of the dependency on instruments, other than tyaga. You let go of the dependency on instruments. When you let go of the dependency on instruments, you become free. Free from the instrument. Free from what? Free from the instrument. And when you are free from that instrument, the true nature is revealed. Or the existing light is revealed. How to take that is the supreme? That which reveals itself is the supreme reality. The communicate பண்றதுக்கு two topics. The idea of Trinity followed by the three schools of thought, which we will take up for next week, not today. We'll continue reading the portion idea of Trinity.